welcome to Crime in Court. This is the rewatch of the 1993 Menendez brothers trial. We have already continued, or we've already streamed it, and now we are continuing on with some more deep dive information that I have researched for you guys. So, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the key players and where are they now. As you know, we had um, many witnesses in this trial, but we are going to just cover a few of the main characters that we know of, and we're going to and I'm going to give you guys an update on what's going on in the case right now. So yesterday, November 25th, Monday, November 25th, there was a hearing, and this status hearing was a hearing about their resentencing hearing, which was scheduled for December 11th. So at this hearing, the new DA and the old DA, or the current DA, I should say, George Gascon, he's on his way out. December 8th, the new DA, Nathan Hochman, is in. And with those 3 days, he would definitely not have enough time to go through the entire case. He needs to go through two trials, transcripts, everything, all the case information, all the evidence. He needs to go over all of it. So obviously, he can't do that in 3 days. And with that, the judge has rescheduled it for January 30th. So the resentencing hearing with the new DA. There's also today, November 26th, there is a habeas hearing. So, as you guys know, I've been keeping you up to date. There is a habeas petition that has been filed for them for asking the judge basically to vacate their sentence, to maybe get a new sentence, or at least to have this new information weighed, because this information has come in. It wasn't available at the time of the trial. This information includes the allegations from Roy Rossello from the boy band Menudo, who says that Jose essayed him in their Beverly Hills home. And then, secondly, is the letter that was found by um, the relatives of Andy Cano. So Andy Cano is a cousin of Erik. They were like best friends growing up, and Andy passed away. And after he had passed away, this reporter Bob Rand, who's been reporting on them very intensely ever since the trials, and he advocates for their release as well, because he really spent a lot of time getting to know the brothers. And so with that, he advocates for them and believes that, the allegations of SA did happen. This is undisputed. Okay, I want to point that out. The SA is undisputed. No one from the state of California ever came forward and disputed it at trial or otherwise. They say, Pam Bazanich loves to say that those are lies, that the boys made it up, but she has no proof of that. She has no. That's just her opinion. She's just blatantly throwing out things that are not fact. The prosecutor in the first trial. So, yeah. So that kind of brings us up to where we are now. Let me shrink myself. This is an article from Los Angeles, NBC4. LA District Attorney's Office to respond to the Menendez brothers' petition to challenge their convictions. So, Tuesday, today, the 26th, is the deadline for Erik and Lyle Menendez's for a response for their petition to overturn their convictions. Tuesday is the deadline by the court for the LA County District Attorney's Office to file its briefing to the brothers' petition for writ of habeas corpus. The petition claims their convictions for fatally shooting their parents, as well as their life without possibility of parole prison sentences, are unconstitutional in light of new evidence. One piece of evidence is the letter. We talked about that. And then the other piece was the Menudo brother. All right, so it's not clear, or the Menudo, not brother, the Menudo band member, Roy Rossello. It's not clear what response from the district attorney's office will be given. Current will be given current. Okay, why does that not make sense to me? It's not clear what the response from the district attorney's office will be given. Current DA George Gascon will be out of the office by then, and the new individual Nathan Hochman is coming in. So, in addition to their effort to overturn their conviction, the defense attorneys from the brothers are also seeking to resentencing based on the claims that they were essayed um, by their own father, as well as the good behavior that they've shown in prison. They haven't really gotten to fights, nothing violent in prison, a few little minor things like having a cell phone when you shouldn't or whatnot. So, current DA George Gascon has recommended that the brothers' sentences be reduced, which means that they would immediately be eligible for parole. But as Gascon will be vacating the DA's office in a week after losing to Nathan Hochman, a judge Monday moved the resentencing hearing to December 30th and 31st. So they have 2 days set aside for the resentencing. Let me make this a little bigger. All right, so Judge or Huckman said that the delay will give him enough time to go over the case. So that, I guess that was chosen with Hochman in the courtroom, giving his feedback as to when he should reschedule it to the judge. So Judge Michael Jessick's decision to continue the hearing on the resentencing motion to January 30th, 31st will provide me, Hochman, with sufficient time to review the extensive prison records, transcripts of two lengthy trials, and voluminous exhibits, as well as consult with prosecutors, law enforcement, defense counsel, and victim family members. I look forward to thoroughly reviewing all the facts and the law to reach a fair and just decision and then defend it in court. So that is a statement from Nathan Hochman, incoming DA, regarding the Menendez brothers case. Another thing that I wanted to bring up during the hearing yesterday, I forgot to mention this earlier. Um, Two family members, I believe, were able to testify. One of them was their aunt, um, the Gloria Vandermolen. I can't remember her first name now. There's Diane, who's the cousin, and I can't remember the aunt's name. Kitty's sister. Kitty's sister said this: "No judge should have to endure what Erik and Lyle had at the hands of their father. It breaks my heart that Kitty knew and did nothing about it." Vandermolen, who turns 93 on Tuesday, today, said that she loves her nephews and lamented that they never knew if tonight was the night they would be AR'd. No child should have to live day by day knowing that at night their dad would come and R them. It's unconscionable. I agree. So that was just something that she said yesterday when she was testifying. So now I want to skip over to um, the press conference. This is Mark Garagos speaking after yesterday's hearing. Again, nothing really happened during the hearing. It was kind of anticlimactic, other than we know now that they are rescheduling the resentencing hearing. So here is Mark Garagos speaking for the family. Oh, let me unmute him.
For those who weren't in the courtroom today, I think you could talk to anybody who was. It was first of all, the first time that Lyle and Erik have been at least remotely in a courtroom in a number.
So they were either supposed to show up in person or via Zoom. However, there were technical difficulties, I guess, so they were only able to call in, is what my understanding is of how they were able to appear in court.
Of years, number one. It also was quite a moving experience, at least from where we sit, to listen to Aunt Terry and Aunt Joan, who are respectively Jose and Kitty's older sisters. Both made impassioned pleas with the judge to send the brothers home.
Joan is her name, the one that I kept wanting to call Gloria. Joan Vandermolen is the one that made that statement. Sorry about that.
And like I said, very moving. Terry testified under oath that she was very close to Jose and practically grew up with him. And Joan as well talked about Kitty and all of the good things that they've done since they've been in there. The judge has now set January 30th and 31st as the days for a plenary or fulsome hearing on the resentencing. He has also invoked what's called AB 600, so he has jurisdiction under that section as well, which is California law. He's going to and has heard and will ask for further briefing. And by January 30th or 31st, we're hoping that by the end of that, or sometime sooner, that we will in fact get the brothers' release. The family is all here, and including Joan, who's here, who everybody can wish happy birthday to tomorrow.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
And Terry, who is here.
Yes, where's Terry?
Where's Terry? Terry's in the back. Terry made the trip.
Bring Terry up here.
Bring Terry up as well. I will tell you that I did.
Again, I believe that's Terry Baralt, and that's Joan Vandermolen, who is speaking. You can't see her; she's behind him. But she was saying, "Yeah, where's Terry?" So Terry and Joan were the individuals who spoke at and provided testimony at yesterday's hearing.
Did not program either one of them, and I don't think either one of them knew they were going to speak, but they spoke, and we did that so they could speak from the heart. And
We're sisters in kind.
yes, and you can tell them you want them home.
I do want them home. They should never have.
Can we get closer to the mic?
Closer to the mic?
What can a kid do with his feathers? I can't stand it. 35 years. It's time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, good. I can see the back of Mark's head.
I'm going to let the family go. I'll answer some questions as long as people don't assault the family on the way out of here, okay? Is that a deal, by the way? Yes? Okay, so let the family move out and have...
Media, please move back.
Yeah, please move back. Let them create a walkway, please.
You're not there. Move back, please.
So he tells the reporters, "I'll stay here and answer questions if you don't go and bombard the family as they go walk to their cars." But it looks like some of the cameramen are leaving, so that's kind of annoying.
They already violated.
Really?
No deal. And I guess no questions if they're going to run after.
Why are they doing this?
Oh, wait, Mark, can we ask you
Unless you stop that, then you're not
Mark, we got no bearing on them. They're rogue.
Mark, can we ask about the petition that was filed this morning? Get rid of the special circumstance? Mark?
There you have it.
Well, thank you.
There you have it.
All right, so he didn't answer any questions. Does he come back? I don't think so. All right, what does this guy have to say? Here's the reporter.
Other things, Kira, about the hearing today. The judge changing that date, saying that he is not ready to go forward. He has 17 boxes of information to go through, and saying there is a new DA here in LA County, and that he wants to leave it up to the new DA, the more conservative DA, who says he's got to look at the evidence and understand this case to come in and decide how they're going to move forward. The DA who's been pushing this is going out in 1 week from today, only has 1 week left, and we'll see what the new DA says. Those family members, to give you a couple of quotes here, Jose's sister, their father's sister, saying in court today, as I read my scratchy notes here, "We miss those that we lost, but we miss the kids too. I asked for some leniency to have them back. She was crying, talking to the judge during it, saying that that her daughter was the same age as Erik Menendez. They grew up together. I would like to be able to hug them again and to see them again, she said today. And then Joan Vandermolen, Kitty's sister, 93 years old tomorrow. You heard from her there a moment ago. She was frail. She was walking slowly up to the what was going to be the witness stand, but she had a hard time getting up there, so she testified from the defense table instead, the DA's table, reading a statement saying no child should have to endure what Erik and Lyle went through, saying I love Erik and Lyle and I wait for them to come home. And again, they did this today and not during the hearing that's now set for the end of January, not knowing if either of the two women will be able to make it back in January based on their health and their age. So the judge said, okay, they could do it today.
Wow. So, Brian, what do you think? You know, there's a newly elected DA now. As we know, this became very much of a political issue.
All right, I don't want to hear what they have to say. But there you have it regarding the press conference. But now, Mark Garagos, their attorney, also went on News Nation. So I wanted to play this for you real quick. And then this will be the last thing, and then we're going to get into where are they now.
That's why Lyle and Erik Menendez got the hook in the first place. Then they were going to be resentenced, could have been released from prison after 35 years almost behind bars because of what? The new understanding that maybe they were telling the truth about this pattern of abuse that we would understand differently if the trial were held today. The sitting DA recommended the brothers be resentenced from serving life without the possibility of parole for murdering their parents to something else, being eligible. But then a new DA named Hockman came into town and said this.
The Menendezes deserve a DA actually doing their job so that there's no cloud of credibility over a decision. When you had the prior DA make that decision 12 days before an election, I will perform that thorough review on this case and quite honestly every case that a case like this deserves. And if I need some additional time, there will not be delay for delay's sake.
What does that mean, though? What's he going to do? The brothers made their first appearance in court in about 30 years. The judge decided to push their upcoming resentencing hearing, moving it from December 11 to January 30 and 31st to give the newly elected DA time to review the case. Thus, not home for the holidays. So what's going to happen here? Mark Garagos, the defense attorney for Erik and Lyle Menendez, in court today. Mark asked Newsom, the governor, to issue clemency here. He said, I defer to the DA. It's good to see you, brother. You know I'm thankful for you. You're my attorney and my friend and my mentor. So what do you think happens here and why?
Well, look, we put on, by the way, you're absolutely right. The judge put it over. He said he wasn't ready to rule, but he did do something interesting. So the prior DA, who's actually still the DA, George Gascon, he initiated the resentencing by filing the paperwork. So under California law, that's significant. The new DA, who was just elected, takes office next week. He cannot revoke that, so to speak. So that's settled law in California.
Well, that's good. And then I've heard that other places too, that it's set in stone. Like the thing that Gascon has put forward, it's already in motion. So the new DA can't take it back. They can't rescind it in any way.
But the judge today initiated also under what's called AB 600 that he was going to initiate a resentencing as well under AB 600. So we have...
The judge wants to initiate a resentencing. So first of all, Gascon was pushing for a resentencing, and now the Judge Jessic, said that he's going to push for a resentencing too, which means that they could again get out almost immediately if there's a parole hearing that is scheduled and they decide that they've done their time, which I don't see why they wouldn't, because at this point 35 years for something which should have been manslaughter / self-defense.
A situation now where we will have a full-blown hearing. What may be lost in just today's continuance is that both Jose's sister and Kitty's older sister, both the older sisters, actually testified in court today. We went forward with partial of the hearing because tomorrow Joan turns 93 and Jose's sister, Teresa, Aunt Terry as they call her, is 85 years young and has been battling cancer. Both of them, I wanted to preserve their testimony. We did that today. I will tell you, as cynical or as hard-boiled as I am, it brought a tear to my eye, both of them, to hear them talk directly to the judge and tell the judge. Now, mind you, remember, they're not just Lyle and Erik's aunts. They are the victims in this case because their little brother and little sister, respectively, are the deceased. And they said, it's been enough. It's been 35 years. We want them home. So that was very moving. I have
one of them
all
said
the
on this
confidence
show
in the world we're going to prevail.
one of them said on the show that I believed them about what was happening, and I didn't know. I mean, we had heard things, we suspected, but it was at a time when people weren't so forthcoming about that and didn't want to acknowledge it. And, you know, had I known, it's terrible what these boys went through. So how does the politics get you? Do you think this new DA doesn't want the same? Does it work for this DA politically to reduce this sentence, or is he a tough on crime guy?
Well, look, part of the politics of this, and the irony is that 30 years ago, as I've been saying since well before the election, 30 years ago, when a jury heard all the defense evidence, two separate juries, they voted not guilty on murder, and all of them tilted, more than half, tilted towards manslaughter. 8 days after OJ was acquitted, all the rulings changed. The second trial with a third jury happened. They were convicted. That was DA politics 30 years ago.
Without the same evidence. Without the same evidence.
Yeah, without the same evidence.
Yep. Second trial, as you all know, if you've been watching my channel, second trial moved forward without talking about the SA and the CA, which is the biggest component in this case. It's the biggest part of their defense, and they were not able to defend themselves. And the brothers went through all the appeal processes they have for years. They've basically known all their appeals have been exhausted, and they've just been sitting there knowing they're never going to get out, yet they've been continuing with these programs and projects within the prison system to better others and to help others who have been victims of SA, CA, especially inmates, helping inmates to get to graduate, you know, to better their opportunities when they get out. They've been, you know, very instrumental in shaping the rehabilitation part of prison, which people forget. You're supposed to become rehabilitated in the court system. And if there's not room for that, then what are we doing? That's my opinion. But okay, continuing on.
Exactly.
Right.
And now I'm hopeful 30 years later, we've got two very experienced DAs who are on this case, the deputy DAs. They've done hundreds of these resentencing, and I'm hopeful that cooler heads will prevail, and that if Hochman does the hard work, and I have no reason to believe he won't, that he's going to come to the same conclusion that everybody has. I will tell you what the problem is with this case. Tomorrow is when the habeas response is due by the DA's office. I hate to make a prediction, but if it goes as I think it will go, have me on tomorrow and I'll tell you exactly what I think is really going on. And we'll wait till tomorrow to see whether the DA's office answers the habeas or not.
Hey, thanks for watching.
Yeah, so today is the what did I say? Today's the deadline for the DA's office to respond to the habeas corpus petition. They might even just say, you know what, sure, let him out, because this is George Gascon coming from him. Maybe he'll say, you know, I'm in support of this. So let's see what he says. All right, so let's get started with our regular presentation. The key players, where are they now? So up first of all, we're going to go through just some friends and family witnesses. So up first is Craig Signorelli. Who is Craig Signorelli? Erik Menendez's best friend. So I'm going to flip around from a lot of different articles. I'm not going to cite them all, but if you are curious as to what they are, I will let you guys know. All right, so just DM me or whatever. DM me on X. All right, so who is Craig? Craig called Erik his best friend for life. The latest season of Netflix's hit true crime anthology series Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, focuses on brothers Lyle and Erik of the 1989 homicides of their parents, Jose and Kitty, as well as the trials that followed. One key player in the case is Craig Signorelli, described as Erik Menendez's best friend, and in Monsters, he's portrayed by Charlie Hall, the son of actress Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I did not know that. But this is the real Craig Signorelli. You may remember him. This is the actor. Much of what is depicted in the show happened in real life. The two really did co-write a screenplay together titled Friends about a son who took the life of his parents to receive a multi-million-dollar inheritance, and Craig really did go to the police to tell them Erik confessed to him. Honestly, when the second jury came back with a guilty verdict, there was a part of me which just said, I'm done, it's finally over. And it felt like there was this sense of relief, followed by this really strange feeling of sadness, according to Signorelli years later. He also said, like, wow, it's finally closed, and I actually have just lost my best friend for life. He's going to be sitting in a jail cell for the next 50 years. That's um, Craig Signorelli for you. All right, so what did he testify to in the Menendez trial? As Dominic Dunn, who reported for Vanity Fair, he's another one that was like all over this case, but he actually thought that the brothers were guilty for a long time. Craig Signorelli looked, acted, and seemed like a rich Beverly Hills kid, although he was from Calabasas, an upper middle class suburb in the northwestern part of the San Fernando Valley where the Menendez family had lived before a pair of burglaries committed by their sons drove them to move virtually overnight to Beverly Hills. So you remember those break-ins that Jose went and paid for? Apparently, they were so embarrassed that they ran and moved to Beverly Hills. So, continuing on, at the time of the homicides, Signorelli's father was a prominent television executive at one of the major film studios. Testifying in Erik's 1993 homicide trial, Craig revealed that Erik confessed to him just days after the homicides. He said he was reluctant to turn in his friend because I wasn't sure if I believed it, the LA Times reported. Craig also revealed that Erik asked him, do you want to know how it happened? And he replied, yes. In November 1989, Craig did go to the police telling them what the brothers had done, and he wore a wire to try and catch him on tape for the cops. Reporting on his testimony, the Times wrote, Erik Menendez watched Signorelli intently Monday, even following him with his eyes as he left the courtroom. But Signorelli, who admitted Monday that he once wore a secret tape recorder at the request of police to try to catch his friend in another confession, avoided eye contact. Why would you want to avoid eye contact? And why, if he's your best friend, don't you look at him? You haven't seen him in, I'm sure, months, years, and you can't even look at him when you're testifying? That says something. Says something about his guilt, what he's feeling. All right, so the screenplay he wrote with Erik mirrored the homicides of Jose and Kitty Menendez. We know this. So the opening scene happened to coincide with what happened on the night of the homicides, he told ABC News in 2017. I remember talking about the opening scene in just the idea of we need to establish a crime, we need to have the protagonist gain an inheritance so he can actually fulfill his dream of creating this hunting ground for humans, he said. I guess there's three ways to do it. You're either going to win the lottery, you're going to work very, very hard for 1 year, and from 18 to 19, you're going to earn $100 million, or you're going to have to find a way to inherit it. And for us, the only option aside from winning the lottery realistically was to do an inheritance. So we set that as the basic scene. Well, then there you just explained how you got to it, and it had nothing to do with Erik's own decision or wanting, desire, this hidden desire to want to hurt his parents. Where is Craig Signorelli in 2024? According to his LinkedIn, which is unclear when it was last updated, he's a leadership speaker based in St. Petersburg, Florida. He writes his About section. He says, when we want to understand something, destruction allows us to investigate all of the moving parts. When we reconstruct it, we gain a more thorough understanding of how each part plays a role in the whole. I've spent my whole life deconstructing and reconstructing principles, events, innovations, and arguments. Through this practice, I've become a speaker to law students and business students, to coaches and professional athletes, and to company executives and leadership teams. When we find what we are born to do, it is easy to do it. He's also listed as a tennis coach at Rise Tennis Academy, located in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. That's weird. So that is Craig Signorelli. Up next, Marta Cano. Marta Cano is their aunt, Eric and Lyle's aunt, who believes the brothers are innocent. She defended the brothers in court. There's a picture of her, if you need visual recollection to remember her. So she testified. Um, mm, sorry. She defended the brothers in court alongside with her son Andy, who alleged that Eric had been paid by Jose. Marta is the sister of Jose. Marta has defended her nephews Eric and Lyle. So Jose's sister. Not much is known about Marta's life before the Menendez brothers went on trial, but the former stockbroker became a big part of the media coverage of the court case. Her brother Jose was born on May 6, 1944 in Cuba, but moved to the United States at the start of the Cuban Revolution. He married his wife Kitty in 1963, and they had their first son Lyle just 5 years later. Lyle and his younger brother Erik eventually took the lives of their parents in 1989 in a, as they're calling it, a way that was so violent that the authorities believed the mob might have been involved, which, if you know, that's not how mobsters take people out, but okay. So they lived a lavish lifestyle using their inheritance before they were arrested, but they also used Jose's money whenever they wanted because they got whatever they wanted financially. So that's really not a good argument, but okay. An infamous trial. Marta attended her nephew's trial that was watched with keen interest across America. Eric claimed that he and his brother had taken their parents' lives because their father had been SAing them. Marta's son Andy testified to this and claimed that Eric had told him about the VA when he was 13 years old. Now we're going to get into Andy in this article and another one. Eric and Lyle's aunt also testified in their defense, but eventually the brothers were sentenced to life in prison without parole. Both brothers did go on to find love in prison. We talked about that, and they've been married. Oh, speaking of, that's another whole rumor where something came out recently where now Lyle and his wife have been separated for a while, Rebecca Sneed, and now he's dating some younger woman who has been visiting him in the prison. And this leaked, and now it's like, oh, look, he's such a bad person. He's cheating on Rebecca. When Rebecca came out and said, no, that's not the case. We've been separated. I know about this. It's not a scandal, basically. And she's like, I'm still here fighting for his release and trying to get him out. So that's going on. Marta attended Lyle and his then wife Anna Erickson's wedding on July 2nd, but the couple divorced a few years later. That's when he married Rebecca Sneed a little later. All right, so that's it for that article. Let's move on to Andy. Andy Cano is the cousin of Eric and Lyle. The Menendez brothers' cousin, Andy Cano, testified during their trial and was the recipient of Eric's letter. The Menendez brothers have been infamous criminals ever since taking the lives of their parents, Kitty and Jose, in 1989. Over 35 years later, this case has resurfaced, especially after the release of Ryan Murphy's Monsters, which we've already talked about on this channel. It's a terrible show regarding accuracy. It's a great show regarding like the acting and stuff. It's great, but when it comes to the actual accuracy, truth, facts, evidence, I wouldn't recommend watching Ryan Murphy's Monsters. Um, What else? All right, so the evidence includes a letter that Erik wrote to his cousin Andy Cano months before the crime. In addition to the new evidence, former member of Menudo, Roy Rossello, claimed that he was also essayed by Jose. Menendez's late cousin played a part in the trial as a key witness. Hollywood Life has gathered information on Andy Cano. Learn more below. So, who was Andy Cano? He was the cousin of Lyle and Erik. He passed away in 2003 from a drug overdose at the age of 29. I believe that he struggled with the fact that this happened in his family, that this was going on to his cousin and best friend Erik. And I believe that Andy, he really struggled with the fact that he couldn't have helped. He knew and he couldn't have done anything. So I believe it that this OD might have had something to do with emotionally being emotionally unstable after having to suffer through this traumatic thing in your family and to lose your best friend slash cousin going to prison forever for the rest of their life. I think it may have affected his quality of life. So Andy was questioned by the brothers' defense attorney Leslie Abramson and claimed that Erik had confided in him about being essayed by their father. While this was a significant issue in the first trial, it resulted in a mistrial. It wasn't until the second trial that both brothers were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. According to The Sun, which I believe is just um, like a celebrity news magazine, according to The Sun, Andy's sister, Marta, discovered a letter that Erik had written to Andy detailing the A. In the letter, Erik wrote, "I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. He's so overweight that I can't stand to see him. I never know what I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind." This poor kid had PTSD and stress and anxiety, always wondering, always looking over his shoulder, wondering if his dad was going to come in at night to his bedroom. And it didn't even have to be at night. He would do it during the middle of the day. He would do it whenever he felt like it. So will the Menendez brothers case reopen? As of now, it is clear. Okay, well, we know that. I don't need to read that. All right, so next, our other favorite individual, who we talked about for quite some time. I think she was kind of a hero, but also she came off crazy, but at the same time, I think she was sort of a hero in in the defense of the brothers, where she went and testified in their defense because Oziel was a slimy little whatever. We'll get to him, don't worry. So, first, where is Judalyn Smith now? All about her life after testifying in the Menendez brothers' trial and why she's only given one interview since. Judalyn Smith revealed Lyle and Erik Menendez's confession to taking their parents' lives to the police, leading to their ultimate incarceration. She's the one that went to police about the tape that she had of them confessing to Dr. Oziel. Judalyn Smith may not have known the Menendez brothers personally, but she played a significant role in their decades-long incarceration. Netflix's Monsters tells the story of Erik and Lyle taking their parents' lives on August 20th, 1989. The siblings were 18 and 21 at the time and were arrested in March 1990. But it wasn't until 1996, after 2 trials, that Erik and Lyle were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The brothers were caught after they confessed to their therapist, L. Jerome Oziel, who then told his mistress, Smith. After he and Smith broke up, she went to the police and told them everything she knew. Within days, Erik and Lyle were arrested. Now, Smith has stayed mainly out of the public eye for the last decade after appearing in 2015's true crime docuseries M made me famous. I did not know she was in there, which marked her first public appearance in 25 years. She says, there was some paper that said something about me having loose lips. It's like, excuse me, if that was your mother and father getting M'd, would you like someone to have tight lips or loose lips? These decades after testifying against the Menendez brothers in court, here's 3 decades, sorry, 3 decades after testifying, here's what we know about Judalon now. Who is Judalon? That's the character that was playing her in the Menendez Monsters show. She was actually, this is Judalon, the actual Judalon. That's the actor. All right, Smith was Lyle and Eric's therapist, Oziel's former mistress, while he was treating the brothers. This was before he met the Menendez brothers. Smith allegedly sought out Oziel's services, but after realizing that she could not afford his therapy, they began an affair. So she sought out his services. He tries to woo and seduce her. They have this affair going on and whatever. And uh, during that time, they were dating is when Eric and Lyle came to Oziel. So Smith alleged that the two had a relationship in which he manipulated her, sharing during her testimony in the Menendez trial that she moved into his house after he got the brothers on tape confessing to the crime per the Los Angeles Times. In 1990, Smith sued Oziel. That's interesting. So this is before the trial even started, because the trial that we just watched took place in 93. Their second trial takes place in 96. So in 1990, Smith sued Oziel, alleging that he assaulted, kidnapped, and medicated her against her will. Wow. Oziel denied any wrongdoing, and the case was ultimately settled. Smith claimed that while she lived in Oziel's home with his wife Laurel Oziel, say that 10 times fast, that's a hard name, and 2 kids, she was very good friends with Laurel. So she moves in with Oziel. She's the mistress, mind you. She moves in with the wife, kids, and her paramour, and she becomes very good friends with Laurel. During that time, she alleged that Oziel victimized her and she was beaten, and isolated. I wouldn't call it romantic, but there was sex, she said of their relationship. Meanwhile, Laurel described the time differently, claiming in a statement, "We were held hostage by this woman in our own home," she says. Okay. How did she get into your home and stay there if you guys didn't let her in? That makes no sense. So we know that Smith gets them arrested. So Erik first confessed to the crimes on October 31st, 1989, during a session with Oziel, which Smith claimed she overheard, and she was standing outside the door. She testified that Oziel had asked her to listen in to their conversation, but the psychologist denied that in a statement. Smith was never asked to eavesdrop on any of my patients in therapy, nor do I believe she ever did, he said to the LA Times. After the October session, Oziel convinced the brothers to allow him to record their confession on a December 11th tape, in which they told the therapist they took their mom's life to put her out of her misery and that the dad deserved to die for having an affair that led to Kitty's despair. But those were all words that Oziel put into their mouths. Following the taped confession, Smith said Oziel told her that he got what he needed because he was trying to blackmail them, of course, because all he saw was dollar signs when he looked at them. 4 months later, after escaping from Oziel's house following their breakup, Smith went to the police and informed them of the tapes Oziel possessed of the Menendez brothers' confessions, and 4 days later, the brothers were arrested. What did Judalon testify to? During the 93 trial, Smith mainly testified about the tapes that Oziel had of the confessions. While she originally came to the police with information against the Menendez brothers, she soon changed her tune and was called by the defense in an effort to discredit Oziel. Remember, Oziel was like their star witness for the prosecution. He was the only like expert witness that they brought on. And he had a lot of problems. He was already under investigation for some kind of misconduct. He was doing unethical things. He was having dual relationships with clients where they would get sessions for, in return, doing handiwork around Oziel's house. So things like that. And he was already, he was suspended. His license was suspended. So even when he was treating Erik, so his credibility is very lacking. She testified, Dunalon testified that Oziel needed to get them to say incriminating things on a tape so we would have the tape to protect us, while telling the brothers that they should allow him to record them so they could prove to a jury that, they were remorseful or whatever. Yeah, he's playing both sides, as you can see. Smith claimed that her past statements against the Menendez brothers were a result of being brainwashed by Oziel. What has Judalyn Smith said about the case since? Since she finished her testimony, Smith has not spoken in any interviews about the case until her 2015 appearance in M Made Me Famous, in which she opened up about the media attention she received after the trial. She said, "It was a little confusing for me the way the media was. I really didn't understand the attack I was going to come under for doing the right thing." She added that while she knew it took her a long time to do the right thing in coming forward to the police, what mattered was that ultimately I did. However, the negative media coverage frustrated and scared her, she said. There was one newscaster that called me a nutball on the radio, Smith said. It was frightening. Someone comes forward and then they crucify you. So where is she now? Since the case, Smith has mainly stayed out of the public eye. She last updated her LinkedIn in 2012, when at the time she was working as an EMT and living in Beverly Hills, California. I cannot picture her as an EMT. Can you guys? Like, what if she broke a nail? I mean, not to be all judgmental, but I mean, you saw how she came across. She was very like put together, perfect. Plus, at this age, like how old is she now? And working as an EMT, that's kind of a little far-fetched. Maybe she's retired now. I don't know. So I am a low-key, high-energy person, she wrote in her bio. She has a book out there. I believe no one should work, but everyone should be engaged in a productive passion that sustains their lifestyle and in some way benefits others. In Monsters, the Lyle and Erik Menendez story, Smith is portrayed by Leslie Grossman, who told People in September 2024 that while she didn't meet with Smith before playing her, she would be open to it. If Judalyn reached out and wanted to meet, I would be happy to talk to her, she said, adding, I don't have some strong need to connect with a person that I played, but if they really felt strongly about meeting me, I'd be definitely open to it. So there is that. And at this point in time, I'm going to pause here because I got to get all my other tabs open for what is next. We're going to talk about just a couple experts. There were a lot of experts. We're just going to do a couple that I could find. And then we'll get to the legal team. So hold on one second. Let me get prepped. All right, we're back. All right, so let's see who's up next. Detective Zoller. So we're going to be talking, like I said, expert witnesses, just a few here that we are going to go over. Detective Zoller, as you may remember, was the lead investigator of the case. There's a picture of him right there. It's kind of hard to see him. That was from his funeral. He has passed away. So here is an article I found October 23rd, 2021. The city of Beverly Hills honored the life and career of retired Detective Les Zoller, the prime detective in the Menendez brothers trial and other high-profile cases. Friends, family, community members, and fellow Beverly Hills Police Department officers gathered outside in the boat court on North Rexford Drive on October 17th, this is 2021, to hear speeches and pay dues to the man once described as a real Beverly Hills cop. Detective Zoller dedicated many years of service to law enforcement, shaping the Beverly Hills Police Department and the history of policing through many of his cases. The BHPD will always remember you, Les. Zoller suffered a major stroke on July 9th, sustaining a brain bleed. He was placed into a coma and never regained consciousness. He died on August 4th, and he is survived by his wife, Lisa, and his children, Ashley and Kyle. Zoller joined the department in 1976 from the city of Gardena. Oh, I'm saying that right. Retiring in 2022, and he played a pivotal role in headline grabbing cases like the Menendez brothers, the Billionaire Boys Club, and Van Cleef and Arpels robbery/homicides. I don't know who those people are. Zoller was the primary investigator in the double homicide of Jose and Kitty, which took place on North Elm Drive. The detective told the Los Angeles Times that he suspected the brothers from the onset. Really? Well, why didn't you do anything about it? But it took 7 years to prove it. Really? Because you guys never suspected them once, nor were any tests done. You could have tested their hands for gunshot residue. You didn't search their car. You let them go into their car before you searched it so they could remove evidence. There was a whole bunch of reasons why this law enforcement team, including Detective Zoller, were not effective or good at what they were doing. There's plenty of reasons to suggest that things were not on the up and up either. So it was an honor. Hold on. Okay, I don't know. Apparently, dogs bark just because we open doors in the house, and they're stupid. All right, so I don't know what I was saying. The event was attended by 150 people, including Mayor Robert Wunderlich and Council Member Julian Gold. The city honored Zoller with a proclamation, and an honor guard conducted a flag presentation ceremony to his family. So that's what we know of Detective Zoller. Hold on one second. Sorry again for the interruptions. I just went and closed the door because we might have some loud noises because my boyfriend is redoing some things in the house and we've got company now to come over and work on the house. So you might hear some banging. I apologize. Let's just get through this. We'll be done soon. All right. So where next? Up next. So that was like I said, that was Leslie Zoller. There was some kind of comment that I saw from Bob Rand on his X page. Again, this was a journalist who was covering this case who basically said that he really, he's like, I don't care what it sounds like, but I don't care that he's gone, this Detective Zoller, because he was so problematic in the case against the brothers and on trial on the stand. He did not come off as very honest or trustworthy. Speaking of not being honest or trustworthy, we've got Dr. Oziel. Where is the Menendez brothers therapist, Dr. Jerome Oziel, now? He was a key player in the case. All right, we don't need to hear any more about the stupid monster series because it's really bad. So he was a key player in the story. Dr. Oziel was. Here's what you need to know. First, who even is Dr. Jerome Oziel? Oziel received his doctorate in clinical psychology from Arizona State University in 1972. After living in South Carolina, he moved to Beverly Hills. There, he started a private practice and taught at USC. Per the Los Angeles Times, he became an expert in phobias of various sorts, but as he related in court, the majority of his professional articles dealt with sex-related disorders. Again, this is one of the things that really, really bothers me. So we went through this when we went through Jerome Oziel's testimony already, but Jerome Oziel is a therapist. You're not supposed to disclose what your patients tell you to their parents. That's kind of against the whole patient client confidentiality thing. But this particular therapist decided, yes, that's okay, Jose. If you want me to tell you everything that Erik tells me in our sessions, I will do that for you because you're paying and your money. And he probably did pay him more than a regular session just because. And Oziel thought, hey, I can get more money out of this by, keeping this going. So his expertise is in sexual related disorders. So I want you to keep that in mind and remember this guy was sought out by Jose and Kitty to treat Erik, a minor. Why are they sending him to some guy that treats sex related disorders, first of all? And second of all, why would you want a therapist to tell you every single thing that your son says in therapy? Obviously, to control the narrative and to make sure that the secret stays safe. All right. So, anyways, he never should have been treating Erik in the first place, is my take on that. So, did Erik Menendez really confess to Oziel on Halloween? Oziel's relationship with the Menendez brothers began in 1988 when Jose and Kitty hired him after Lyle and Erik were caught burglarizing houses in Calabasas. He saw Erik for a time. After the homicides of their parents, Erik reached out to Oziel, and yes, he did confess to him. As the Los Angeles Times reported in 1991, in October of 19 sorry, I got like a hair that's itching me. In October of 1989, Erik Menendez, now 20, telephoned his therapist for an urgent appointment. They met late Halloween afternoon, talking first in Oziel's Bedford Drive office and then during a walk in a nearby park, according to court records. It was there, Oziel said on the tapes, that Erik confessed that he and his brother had committed the homicides. Oziel said in notes dictated after the session, Erik revealed in detail the planning and execution of the crime, including the brothers' fabricated alibi defense. On November 2nd, both brothers were in his office where they discussed why they took the lives of their parents. On December 11th, he taped his session with the brothers. Were Oziel's recordings of the brothers deemed admissible in court? In early March 1990, Judalon Smith, Oziel's patient, with whom he was having an affair, went to the police and told them about the tapes. The cops soon seized them and arrested the brothers. After, there was a protracted legal battle over whether or not the tapes were admissible as evidence, and in August 1992, the Supreme Court of California ruled 2 of the 4 tapes were indeed admissible. Oziel became a witness, and they shouldn't have been because they should have been, attorney or not attorney, patient client or patient doctor patient privilege or whatever. So the fact that they came in was kind of, I think, wrong, but whatever, because they have confessions on them, so they're going to let them in. So Oziel became a key witness for the prosecution. During the first trial, the Los Angeles Times reported Oziel testified about the confessions for the prosecution. He then endured a withering cross-examination designed to undermine his credibility. Well, yeah, he wasn't credible. And that's the whole point of cross-examination, is to find out if the person is credible or not. And deflect attention from the slayings. No, that's not it at all. Most of it having to do with the stormy details of his extramarital affair with a woman named Judalon Smith. During the second trial, he did not testify, so they did not call him for the second trial because they knew how problematic he was. But one of his recordings of the brothers was played in court. Where is Dr. Oziel now? And that was the second, so that would have been the second trial that they actually did play one of the recordings without him even testifying and verifying that he created it. So that's weird to me that got in. So where is Oziel today? Well, in 1997, Oziel lost his psychology license. So remember, it had been suspended. He was under investigation and all this. Finally, eventually, in 1997, his license was revoked. He was accused by a state panel of breaking confidentiality rules and having sex with female patients, per the Los Angeles Times. Again, those dual relationships and having relations with his female clients. Oziel denies that his license was seized from him. In a statement to Bustle in 2017, he said, "I did not surrender my license due to the accusation, which implies I gave up my practice because I did things alleged in the original accusation." He added, "I had phased out my practice because I had a major business offer that was highly lucrative and moved to be the CEO of a large business in another state a year and a half prior to the surrender. No agency ever found I did a thing that was improper or wrong." I don't believe him. If you remember him from the trial, he was very long-winded. He had a very high opinion of himself, and he loved to talk about himself. So I'm sure he had a lot to say about that. He is reportedly now going by Jerry Oziel and living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He is listed as a staff member at Marital Medication Center. Per their website, the field of marital medication focuses on improving marriages through mediation as an alternative to divorce. So he's still counseling people. While not all marriages can or should be saved, many couples are happier staying together if they can resolve certain issues. In the Menendez brothers documentary, um, a note read that Oziel declined to participate in the film, so he wanted nothing to do with the Monsters version on TV or on Netflix. All right, so where is Dr. Ann Burgess? You might remember her as kind of the savior of Erik and Lyle in that she testified for several days and talked in depth about trauma related effects from SACA. She was very well spoken. She has done all the research. She's helped the FBI in creating profiles and victimology. She continues to this day to teach, and she's still, going strong. So let's see what Boston nurse, she's living in Boston now, Boston nurse Ann Burgess studied America's most notorious perpetrators of homicide in order to stop them. The subject of the new Hulu docuseries Mastermind worked with the FBI to create the modern standards for psychological profiling. I'm going to have to look at that because I keep forgetting that we have Hulu through Disney. So Ann Burgess has studied some of the most famous perpetrators in modern history, such as Edmund Kemper, Ted Bundy, and brothers Erik and Lyle Menendez, trying to understand their motivations and actions. Her rigorous analysis of these and other notorious figures helped her leave an indelible mark on the field of criminology. Now, a new Hulu documentary titled Mastermind to Think Like a KILLer examines the 87-year-old's legacy. So when was this written? This was written, okay, so this July of this year. So yes, she's 87 years old and she is continuing doing her badassery stuff. So this mastermind to think like a whatter is a three-part series which premieres on July 11th, details her trailblazing work with the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit in the 1980s that set the foundation for modern psychological profiling of serial life enders and other criminals. Decades later, Burgess continues to investigate crimes and inspire the next generation of investigators. Burgess began her career as a nurse. Born in early October 1936, Burgess was raised in Newton, a suburb of Boston. Although she eventually became accomplished in both fields, Burgess initially pursued a nursing career over teaching. She explained to Boston College magazine that three of her uncles were doctors. When Burgess was 10 or 11, she began helping one of them deliver babies in the countryside. How crazy is that? Such a young age. Burgess continued to work directly with patients as part of Boston University's nursing program, performing her clinical work at the psychiatric unit of the Massachusetts Mental Health Center. I was fascinated by human behavior and the variations that you can have, she said. I could not learn enough. There you have Dr. Ann Burgess. She continues to, oh, nope, that's not even the end. Sorry, I thought that was the end. She does continue to teach. And I'm sure if she's needed, as a consultant for cases or whatnot, she's probably additionally hired for that. So she and other nurses were often the first medical personnel to treat crime victims. This gave the inquisitive Burgess an up close look at their behaviors and reactions. Burgess used her observational prowess to co author an important 1973 study in the American Journal of Nursing. Working with Linda Little Holstrom, a sociologist at Boston College, she helped interview 146 survivors of R from ages 3 to 73. Using their findings, the pair concluded the criminal act was largely about power and control for the perpetrators, a major shift from the blame the victim mentality that still persisted at the time. It still persists today, even. Burgess and Holstrom also championed crisis counseling and instructed clinicians on how to recognize signs of R. Soon after the study's release, the FBI contacted Burgess regarding her expertise. Burgess set the standard for criminal profiling. According to BC Magazine in 1978, then FBI Director William Webster invited Burgess to the FBI Academy, where she taught classes about how to speak with crime victims and catalog the information they provided. This caught the attention of agents John Douglas and Robert Ressler, who you might know those names. They wanted to know if Burgess's methods could be used to understand the minds of criminals, particularly serial life enders instead. Starting at 1980, with funding from the U.S. Justice Department, the trio began to set the foundation for criminal profiling. They examined the motives and methods of 36 life enders and categorized them on a spectrum between organized, people more likely to commit premeditated crimes, and disorganized, marking individuals who commit impulsive and careless violence. So, as you may recall from the testimony, they talked a lot about whether it was organized or disorganized. And Ann Burgess said that their crimes were very much disorganized, making it impulsive and careless which supports um, the boys' uh, defense. I can't think of the word. It supports their defense that they did it impulsively in the moment because things were so tense and in so much pressure at that time leading up to that moment over that weekend. So the group was also the first to examine the connection between the perpetrator's crimes and past trauma. So they're the first ones to realize that the person committing the crimes were traumatized in their early years. Burgess and team applied their work to the active investigation of the 1983 homicides of two young boys in Nebraska. After developing a likely profile of the perpetrator, authorities were able to apprehend John Joseph Joubert the Fourth, who confessed to the homicides and was later executed in 1996. I don't know that case or that name. Um, so we'd proven that there was Sorry, start again. This is a quote. We've proven that there was value in understanding the criminal mind. To be able to actually use criminal profiling in an active case to hunt down a perpetrator was the most satisfying reward of all. And that's according to Burgess from her 2021 memoir, which is titled K.I. by Design, M's Mind Hunters, and My Quest to Decipher the Criminal Mind. Burgess's work with the FBI served a loose inspiration for actor Anna Torv's character Wendy Carr in the Netflix Mindhunter. So If you've ever seen that show, the Mindhunter show on Netflix, there was a character that was inspired by Dr. Burgess. She remains a highly influential expert today. Burgess, Douglas, and Ressler published two important books based on their research. One titled Sexual Homicide Patterns and Motives, that was in 1988, and another one titled Crime Classification Manual, a standard system for investigating and classifying violent crime, and that was written in 1992. Even after her work with the FBI, Burgess continued to play a key role in notable criminal cases. In 93, she served as an expert defense witness in the first trial of Lyle and Erik Menendez, the brothers accused of taking the lives of their parents inside their Beverly Hills home in August 1989. Burgess interviewed Erik for roughly 50 hours as part of her involvement determining allegations of SA by their father Jose were valid and an originating cause for the homicides. The trial resulted in a hung jury, but the brothers were later convicted of first-degree homicide in the second jury, where Ann Burgess was not allowed to testify. So there's that. Burgess also interviewed Andrea Constand, who, in the 2005 civil lawsuit, accused actor and comedian Bill Cosby of SA. A settlement was reached in the case the following year. Today, Burgess is still investigating. Ann Burgess speaks at the New York City premiere of Mastermind to Think Like a Perpetrator. That was where she was speaking earlier this year, June of this year. All right, so now 87, Burgess has continued to use her sleuthing skills. She and psychiatric nursing colleagues from Johns Hopkins University and the University of Maryland formed a Super Sleuth Club, which meets monthly via Zoom to examine cold cases. That's awesome. In the meantime, she continued to inspire the next generation of investigators by serving as a professor of psychiatric mental health nursing at Boston College. She is also a professor emeritus at the University of Pennsylvania. Burgess told the Teacher As podcast. Never heard of that. She leads 4 courses at Boston College: victimology, forensic science, forensic mental health, and wounded warriors in transition, an elective for students to gain an understanding of military culture, catastrophic injuries, and the journey of wounded warriors and their family members. That's awesome. Her classes examine a number of past and ongoing cases, including the Gilgo Beach and University of Idaho homicides, and often incorporate former members of law enforcement and actual victims. So you're learning from actual real world experience. And this woman has it, like lots of it. And so I would love to take one of her classes. One of Burgess's current areas of focus is threat assessment to prevent mass casualty events such as school shootings. We're seeing so many of these shootings that are going on, and we have to be able to get the red flag that there are warning signs, and that's all in social media, Burgess said. One way you can hopefully try to find out what's going on is to analyze what they're writing, because what they write is what they think, and we know that thinking is what drives behavior. Brilliant, brilliant lady. Her Hulu docuseries, which Burgess served as a consulting producer on, is sure to examine the thorough approach that she has and continues to use throughout her career in criminology. Mastermind to Think Like a You-Know-Whatter, now streaming in full, is directed by Abby Fuller and produced by Llewellyn Pictures, the production company belonging to actor Dakota Fanning and her Golden Globe winning sister, Elle. All right. In an interview with Boston College, Fuller spoke about the importance of sharing Burgess's story and influence on criminal personality study. Dr. Burgess's story is not just about studying the minds of serial life enders. It's about understanding victims and believing victims. That's the thread that I saw. The series is about her early career and the many ways she's influenced and shaped law enforcement and the courts in different systems. I'm going to definitely check that out. Sounds good. She was like my hero in the whole thing. Was Ann Burgess, Dr. Burgess. She was awesome. And lastly, for our experts, witnesses, whatnots, we're going to hear from juror number 9. Is that the I can't remember which juror she is. There's a juror named Hazel Thornton. She's been very vocal and outspoken. She was from the first jury, and she always advocated for manslaughter for the boys, the brothers, and she's been very vocal about it ever since. So the juror who wanted manslaughter, not the homicide conviction for Erik, speaks out. Hazel Thornton, who sat on Erik's first trial for 7 months, says the jury was split down the middle by gender, with the men irrational and the women reasonable, she says. In 1993, Hazel Thornton, who worked at Pacific Bell, the name of the company that installed landlines back then, was called to jury duty. 7 months later, she was better known as juror number 9 as she deliberated the fate of Erik Menendez across a table, she says, from 6 angry men. The brothers' first highly publicized trial in connection with the sensational 1989 Beverly Hills homicides of their parents, Kitty and Jose, ended in 2 hung juries for each brother in 94 after deliberations that Thornton called a battle of the sexes. Prosecutors argue that the brothers took the lives of their parents in an unprovoked attack and went on a wild spending spree, while their defense attorneys insisted that homicide was spawned by years of essay at the hands of Jose and Kitty. Kitty, too. Kitty essayed Lyle also for a few years. The men on the jury and in the public were having a hard time accepting the fact that boys could be aided by their father. Thornton remembered. They couldn't believe Jose could essay his own kids. They thought Erik was gay and he was describing homosexual acts. See how wrong and why this trial needs to be looked at again? Why their verdict needs to be reviewed again? The theory that Erik was gay was floated by the prosecution during closing arguments delivered by then Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney Lester Kuriyama. At the end of the Menendez brothers' 1993 trial, in his closing statement, Kuriyama suggested that Erik Menendez's closeted homosexuality, not molestation by his father, was the catalyst for the pent-up rage that led to the homicides. Prosecutors went as far as to call the molestation claims the abuse excuse. That's what they were termed by a lot of the media. They adopted that term. In his own testimony, Erik Menendez denied that he is gay and that he was confused because of the unrelenting essay he insists he suffered at the hands of Jose Menendez, who, he said, repeatedly called him a faggot. Sorry for the language, but that is what he called him. All right, Kitty Menendez also taunted him and ordered him to get a girlfriend. Erik testified, saying his mother made it sound worse than death to be gay. That testimony, Thornton remembers, prompted the women of the jury to send a note to the judge 15 days into deliberations asking to hear all testimony about or allusions to Erik's homosexuality, largely because there was no evidence he was gay. By then, she said tensions were high in the jury room as men yelled at the women, called us names, and pounded on the table. The men all wanted first-degree homicide and the women wanted manslaughter. The women were more logical, Thornton said. Some of the men remarked that they had wished their dad had shown up at sporting events or argued that no one witnessed the essay. Thornton said the women pointed out the logical argument that the burden was not on the defense to prove the Menendez brothers had been AR'd, but on the prosecution to prove that the homicide was in first degree. I didn't have to believe every word the brothers said. I had to decide whether the burden of proof was met by the government. That is what people don't understand when they go on a jury. They don't have to decide the case. They just have to decide, did the state prove its case? And if not, you don't find them guilty. Like, it's that simple. I don't understand why we're having so many problems with jurors these days understanding that and understanding what reasonable doubt is. The defense does not have to prove anything, according to what Thornton said. All right, so that line of thinking, she remembers, was met with misogynistic attacks, not just by her fellow jurors, but by the public who accused the women of the juries of being too emotional or in love with the brothers or enamored by Leslie, Eric's lawyer, or too stupid to understand the jury instructions. Thornton, who has written a book based on her journals scribbled during the months she spent on the jury and the weeks of contentious negotiations, said that she was swayed not just by the testimony centered on Jose's SA, but also by the physical and mental suffering the parents imposed on Eric and Lyle. She said the new evidence that bolsters the brothers' argument that they had been brutally essayed by Jose is vindicating not only to the Menendez boys and their defense teams, but also to the jurors who stood by their beliefs. That evidence includes a hand scrawled letter written by Erik 8 months before the homicides. I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. He is so overweight that I can't stand to see him. I never know when it's going to happen. And it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come. Erik wrote in the chilling hand scrawled cry for help. I don't know if I'll make it through this. That was his handwritten letter. Thornton said she is often asked if she has PTSD from the trial given the grisly crime scene photos. She said the real trauma came from the name calling and criticism of women that included being publicly called bimbo sluts by Los Angeles radio show hosts and others. That abuse was only magnified by the first-degree homicide guilty verdict that came after the Menendez brothers' second trial in '95, after which they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During that trial, the judge did not allow in some of the evidence related to the SA allegations. Some, it was like all of it. And the prosecutors argued that the brothers, who were 18 and 21 at the times, were lying about the allegations. Thornton alleges that after a slew of embarrassing losses for Los Angeles County prosecutors at that time, O.J. Simpson, Reginald Denny, and the McMartin preschool trial ended with a not guilty or a hung jury, there was pressure on the LA court system to find a win. And to them, a conviction is a win. There's three other big cases here that all ended in a hung jury at the time. So there was a whole lot of pressure to win this case by a win is convicting the brothers. So they wanted the conviction. And I think they did just about anything to get it. And that meant, keeping out all of the stuff about the essay during the second trial. Now that the brothers' case is back in the national spotlight, one okay, never mind. Um, Thornton plays a central role. She thinks the brothers' release should be soon. She's in the the Netflix documentary that was recently released. She was in that. Any amount of vindication for them amounts to vindication for me for having believed their story, Thornton says, adding that she held on to the judge's instructions for an imperfect self-defense, a California statute that states defendants can claim they acted in reasonable self-defense but used too much force. The Menendez brothers, she believes, were acting out of a reasonable fear for their lives and were over-sentenced as a result. This month, at a private media event with selected members of the press, Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon said in his office he will reevaluate. So that was before that. He also says we're not ready to believe or not believe that information, which has since been bolstered by recent allegations from Roy Rosello Diaz, a former member of the iconic boy band Menudo that Jose Menendez essayed in their bathroom at the Beverly Hills home. But Gascon added, "We're here to tell you that we have a moral and ethical obligation to review what is being presented to us and make a determination." We know, we know, we know. Okay, so Kim Kardashian, Rosie O'Donnell have all been advocates for them as well. And yeah, Thornton, lastly, she says, if they had been convicted of manslaughter, which is what the women wanted, they'd be out by now. They would have been out at least, what, like 10 years ago or something like that. So they definitely wouldn't have done as much time as they have done. All right, up next, where is Judge Stanley Weisberg now? Well, let's find out if we can find out anything. The former Los Angeles County Superior Court judge sparked controversy for several decisions he made during Lyle and Erik Menendez's 1990s trials. Picture of the judge. I hate these ads that just play. Slows your bandwidth and everything down. All right, so Lyle and Erik Menendez may have another day in court with a new court hearing scheduled to take place November 29th. Is that maybe that's the habeas hearing? Because today is just the deadline for the state or the prosecutor to respond. So maybe the 29th is the hearing then? So what is the 29th? I did not know that that was a date. Why is my calendar not coming up? Oh, the 29th is this Friday. So they have a court hearing this Friday, day after Thanksgiving. All right. I'll make sure I cover that as well. So both of the 1990 trials were presided over by Judge Stanley Weisberg. The possibility of a retrial for the Menendez brothers still looms, but their supporters are wondering where Weisberg is now and who could preside over their case if it goes to trial for the third time. Definitely not Weisberg. Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon announced that after evidence supporting the Menendez brothers' claims was accepted, the court has a moral and an ethical obligation to review what is being presented to us and make a determination based on a resentencing side, whether they deserve to be resentenced, even though they were clearly the perpetrators, because they have been in prison for years and they have paid back their dues to society. It almost seems like that's his opinion, that they've paid back their dues and they've done their time. If there was evidence that was not presented to the court at that time, and had that evidence been presented, perhaps a jury would have come to a different conclusion. Hollywood Life has the details about the former judge who presided over Lyle and Erik's case below. Erik and Lyle might have their case reevaluated based on the emergence of new evidence, and the decision would likely come by the end of the week. So that was back, that was October 24th. Right? I don't know. Sorry. My brain just stopped working for a second. All right, so who is Stanley? Who is Stanley Weisberg? Weisberg was a prosecutor and a Los Angeles County Superior Court judge. He was first appointed to the Superior Court in 1988. Among the most famous cases that Weisberg presided over were the SA allegations at McMartin Preschool, which ended in a mistrial in 1990, and a 91 Rodney King case, which concluded with the acquittal of the Los Angeles Police Department officers accused of beating Rodney King. This resulted in the 1992 Los Angeles riots. What did Judge Weisberg do during the Menendez case? In 93, Weisberg was assigned as the judge over the Menendez brothers' case. He presided over both of their 1990 trials, since the first one ended with a hung jury. Weisberg permitted cameras in the courtroom during the first trial, but not the second one. During Lyle and Erik's second trial, Weisberg blocked all expert testimony in the defense's abuse excuse, according to the Los Angeles Times. According to the outlet, Weisberg said that he was not convinced that there were legal grounds in the state of California to allow experts to testify that the Menendez brothers were battered children. Why? Why wouldn't there be ground? Like, they should be able to defend themselves. After the brothers were convicted of first-degree homicide in 1996, Weisberg sentenced them to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Where is he now? After retiring as a judge in 2008, Weisberg has kept a low profile. Since the Menendez brothers case was one of the most publicized trials, Weisberg was portrayed several times on TV and in films such as on Saturday Night Live and Law and Order True Crime. Weisberg's whereabouts are currently unknown. So there you have it. There's some young pictures of Erik. And let's move on. So now we're on to the legal people. If you couldn't tell, we've got Pam Mazanich, Jill Lansing, and Leslie Abramson, and then we'll be done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I thought this was kind of fun to read all these little articles about different people from the trial. All right, so where is Pamela Bazanich now? All about the Menendez brothers prosecutor and why she wants Erik and Lyle to stay in jail. She's been very vocal about that. So it's been 35 years since Lyle and Erik Menendez took the lives of their parents, Jose and Kitty, and Pamela Bazanich does not want to see the brothers released from prison. Former Los Angeles Deputy District Attorney Bazanich served as the lead prosecutor in the first trial, which began in 1993, resulting in a hung jury. She said they wanted away from their parents, but they wanted the money and the lifestyle. It's as simple as that, she said in Oxygen's Blood and Money, the case of the Menendez brothers today, which aired in 2023. She is all over media whenever there's an opportunity for her to speak up. This woman is bitter and angry that Abramson, I think, bested her at her game in court. But this woman is very angry and bitter, and she's constantly, at every turn she can, saying that the brothers were liars and the abuse didn't happen and that they belong in jail. Which, that's her opinion. She can have it, but a lot of people disagree with her. People take the lives of their parents all the time. Rich people from Beverly Hills don't, and that's why this case was a phenomenon. I'm not afraid of the Menendez brothers, but my sense of justice would be offended if they got out, she says. Most recently, Bazanich was one of the main interviewees for Netflix's The Menendez Brothers, which aired October 7th. Again, she was unwavering in her stance that Lyle and Erik should remain behind bars for the rest of their lives. This was the most recent documentary on Netflix. She says, the only reason we're doing this special is because of the TikTok movement to free the Menendez. If that's how we're going to try cases now, why don't we just have a poll? You present the facts, everybody gets to vote on TikTok, and then we decide who gets to go home, she said in the documentary. Your beliefs are not facts, they're just beliefs. Yeah, your belief that they're lying, that's just a belief. It's not a fact. And by the way, all you TikTok people, I'm armed. We got guns all over the house, so don't mess with me, she says. Here's everything you need to know about Pam Bazanich, including her prosecution strategy against the Menendez brothers and where she is today. How did Pamela Bazanich become the lead prosecutor in the Menendez case? Bazanich who was born in 1954 and attended law school at the University of Southern California, was admitted to the State Bar of California in 1979. At the time of the Menendez homicides, she was working in the organized crime unit at the LA District Attorney's Office. I got to work and they said, it's yours, she recalled in Blood and Money, referring to the Menendez case. It came my way because there were allegations that it was a mob hit. Former Deputy District Attorney Elliot Aladeff was originally the lead prosecutor. However, according to the Los Angeles Times, undisclosed professional conflicts with his boss, District Attorney Ira Rayner, resulted in him being removed from the case. So, what prosecution strategy did Pam use at the trial? In '93, the Menendez brothers were tried for the homicides of their parents with separate injuries. Defense attorneys Leslie Abramson defended Erik, while attorney Jill Lansing represented Lyle. Both lawyers argued imperfect self defense, claiming that the brothers, after allegedly being mentally, physically, and sexually aid all of their lives, believed that Jose and Kitty intended to take their lives. Bozanich's strategy was to convince the jury that the Menendez brothers fabricated their stories and took their parents' lives out of greed, seeking the family's $14 million fortune. I'm telling you, that whole defense was fabricated. It was done artfully, but it was fabricated. And if I were an immoral person, I would have fabricated it much the same way, she said in Netflix's documentary, adding that she couldn't share her honest opinions about Abramson without getting sued. I'm not giving up my house, she says. See what I mean? She's bitter. She's bitter and angry. She's angry at Abramson for some reason. Abramson refused to appear in the Netflix documentary and provided a statement to the filmmakers, which appeared in the end credits. So this is coming from Leslie Abramson. She says, 30 years is a long time. I'd like to leave the past in the past. No amount of media nor teenage petitions will alter the fate of these clients. Only the court can do that, and they have ruled, she wrote. The state, via Bozanich, also maintained the stance that men cannot be AR'd because they lack the necessary equipment to actually be AR'd, a prosecution strategy that has angered supporters of the Menendez brothers. In an October 2024 press release, the district attorney's office publicly changed this opinion. I think it's also important that we recognize that both men and women can be victims of SA, he said. A court TV interview from the 90s, as shown in the Menendez brothers, also quoted Pam saying, "People have to be held accountable for what they do, regardless of how they're feeling, because there are a lot of abused people who don't commit crimes." 1993 trial ultimately resulted in a hung jury, but those people who don't commit crimes got help. They had other ways to get out. The boys didn't feel like they did. So the 1993 trial ultimately resulted in a hung jury. She says, "I didn't win, okay? I didn't lose in the sense that they didn't go home, but I didn't win, and that was hard." Again, she's bitter. She's bitter she didn't get that guilty. "I went on TV and said I wouldn't retry this case. I'd rather eat ground glass for a year. That's how I felt. They didn't want me, and I didn't want them." Deputy District Attorney David Kahn took the reins in '96 and he won. Lyle and Erik were tried together in front of a single jury who eventually convicted them on 2 counts, blah, blah, blah. All right, so what did Pam say in the Netflix series? While talking to Netflix for the Menendez brothers, Bozanich recounted her time as lead prosecutor, including the first time she met Lyle and Erik in the courtroom. "I had no reaction to the Menendez brothers. There was no visceral reaction, and I didn't feel like I was in the presence of pure evil. They were like poisonous potted plants, but there was nothing about them that I found fascinating. They were just these dumb jock perpetrators." Zanich also described the day of opening statements. "I was coming into the courthouse, and people were filming me, and I just thought, what the hell have I gotten myself into? And I went into the bathroom and threw up. The only time I've ever thrown up during a trial or before a trial or anything. Having the media there was a nightmare. You don't have that in a normal homicide trial." Former prosecutor showed great disdain for the Menendez brothers in the documentary, but admitted that Jose had very few, if any, redeeming qualities. She says, "I couldn't find anyone to say anything nice about Jose Menendez except for his secretary." So what does that tell you? And everybody else had just these awful stories about him and what a monster he was, she said. The loss of Jose Menendez, in my mind, was an actual plus for mankind. Jose Menendez was a really awful man, okay? And he raised two sons capable of homicide, so there you go. What? Okay, lady. Bazanich went on to add that her motivation for doing the interview was Kitty explaining the poor woman that gave birth to both of them was treated like a doormat by her husband and her sons, and she was slaughtered like a wild animal inside her own home. She was just as vicious and horrible to them as Jose was. Let's get that straight. Following the mistrial, Bazanich told reporters per Court TV that the Menendez case was a debilitating process that impacted her physically and emotionally. It was very, very difficult. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, she said. Bazanich has since retired from the district attorney's office. Her law license has been inactive since 2005. There you go. Bitter old Pam Bazanich right there. What's happened to Jill Lansing? This is Lyle's attorney. Jill Lansing declined to represent Lyle Menendez during his second trial, so where is she now? Brothers Erik and Lyle Menendez were arrested and charged with the homicides of their parents. We know this. The wealthy siblings from Beverly Hills went on a spending spree, so they say. Prosecutor Pam Bazanich argued that their homicides were motivated by money. The trial became a media circus with certain people taking center stage. One of them was Erik's attorney, Leslie Abramson, who was widely regarded as one of the best criminal defense lawyers in the country. She was smart, driven, and never shied away from sharing her opinion. Lyle's attorney, who was also talented, though she preferred to remain out of the spotlight. Where is Jill Lansing now? Here's what we know. All right, that's bothering me. All right, so not much is known about what happened to Jill Lansing after she defended Lyle Menendez. I don't know why I said defeated. My brain. It's too much. Over an hour and a half gets to be long, so I apologize. According to the Los Angeles Times, she declined to defend him again after their first trial ended. So she didn't go back and defend him for trial number two. Leslie Abramson stayed on for a much lesser fee. And I don't know why Lansing didn't stay on, but here's what we know. All right, so the then 47-year-old wanted to spend more time with her daughter. Who can blame her? The Menendez brothers' trial was an international sensation. According to the State Bar of California, Jill's license was inactive beginning in January 2007. She would have been about 60 years old at that time. So during his second trial, Lyle was represented by Charlie Gessler, a man who had worked in the public defender's office for nearly 30 years per the Los Angeles Times. Charlie was known for making sure his clients stayed off death row and was able to do the same for Lyle. He has the admiration and respect of everyone who has tried cases, either with him or against him, Jill told the outlet. This is a remarkable accomplishment in a rather combative business. So Lyle Menendez was actually very fond of Jill Lansing. In a March 2021 Facebook post from his account, written by his wife Rebecca, Lyle discussed how much he appreciated Jill. He loved her very much and felt safe with her to reveal his most painful, deeply hidden, humiliating secrets in front of the entire world. He went on to say that testifying about his alleged abuse was excruciating, that he did it to give a voice to the multitudes of silenced victims. That's one of the reasons why he did it. Obviously, Jill leaving was incredibly painful for Lyle, and while Charlie was a more than adequate replacement, he said the emotional connection was just not there. This is primarily why Lyle said he did not testify during the second trial. The idea of having to retell those horrible stories to the world with a person who did not provide the same emotional safety to Lyle just was not tenable, wrote his wife. Lyle added that though he understood how effective his testimony was in the first trial, he couldn't handle another round of ridicule without Jill by his side. The post reads, Erik still had Leslie. Lyle did not have Jill. That's sad. But that's about all we know. We don't really know where Jill is. She's basically kept a low profile, obviously, and that's the end of that article, but it does give us at least some insight as to why she didn't come back, what was going on in the whole process of, she left and then Eric got it, or Lyle got a new attorney. So I don't know. That would have been difficult, and I can see that. Like you could tell during the testimony that they trusted their attorneys implicitly. Eric trusted Leslie, and Lyle trusted Jill. You could just tell that they had trust there because otherwise that those things that they revealed probably would have never been revealed. So finally, where is Leslie Abramson today? Outspoken trial attorney Leslie Abramson once told reporters that the convicted perpetrators grew up in a grotesque home environment before taking the lives of their parents in 1989. This is a woman who played Edie Falco. She played uh, Leslie Abramson. She did an excellent, excellent job in the show. If you do watch the show, great acting, but not accurate. All right, so tough as nails, trial lawyer Leslie Abramson, famous for representing one half of the Menendez brothers in the mid 1990s, left her mark in one of the most gripping homicide cases of recent memory. The New York City born attorney represented Erik Menendez in both his trials after he and his brother Lyle Menendez took the lives of their parents in Beverly Hills, California. Ultimately, the young men were found guilty in the 1989 double homicide and continue to serve life sentences today. The stunning events are the focus of the Law and Order true crime The Menendez Homicides, now available to watch on Peacock, with Emmy Award and Golden Globe winning actress Edie Falco from The Sopranos and Nurse Jackie, starring as Erik Menendez's staunch defender. But where is Leslie Abramson now? Keep reading to find out. Leslie Abramson, 81, keeps a relatively low profile these days. According to information posted by the State Bar of California, she was admitted to the bar in 1970 and practiced law until 2013. So she's been at least retired for 11 years. She was again listed as active in 2018, but has been listed again as inactive since 2023. So I guess she couldn't stay away. She last worked at the law office of Leslie H. Abramson in Monrovia, California, in Los Angeles County. On October 9th, 2024, she appeared in an interview with Entertainment Tonight denouncing the series Monsters by calling it a piece of shit and stating she didn't tune in. When asked about the case, she said, "I will make no comments about my client, none whatsoever." Leslie Abramson's career before the Menendez trial. Leslie was born in 43 in Queens, New York, and raised by her mother and grandmother after her father abandoned the family, according to the Washington Post. That's why she's such a strong personality. She was raised by two women, and yeah, uh, no man in the home. He left, and that's why Leslie's the well-spoken individual that she is. She married and had a daughter before moving to Los Angeles in 1964, eventually divorcing the child's father. She later married Los Angeles Times reporter Tim Rutten, with whom she adopted a son, according to People. The pair divorced in 2007. Abramson earned her law degree from UCLA and spent her first 6 years as a public defender, where she became known for her no-nonsense demeanor and a take-no-prisoners tactics. Before going into private practice, per the Washington Post, she would go on to receive several accolades, including the 1985 when she became the first woman to earn the title of Outstanding Trial Attorney by the Los Angeles Criminal Courts Bar Association, according to a June 23rd, 1989 article by the Los Angeles Times. The piece was published less than a month before Erik and Lyle's the homicides of their parents, entitled "The Defender Some say Leslie Abramson is the best female criminal defense lawyer around, others say she's the best, period. At the time, Abramson defended Brian Hale, whose homicide conviction for taking the lives of two elderly men was overturned on the grounds of mental incompetency. She also defended gynecologist Dr. Khalid Parvez, who was accused and later acquitted of strangling his 11-year-old son and horrifically chopping his body into pieces, hundreds of pieces. Yikes. He was accused and then acquitted. Abramson's mission in life was to see the death penalty abolished, and according to the Washington Post, she spent her working life building a reputation as a 4'11", fire-eating, mudslinging, nuclear strength pain in the legal butt. I love that. That's her own definition of how she was. In 1990, famed journalist Dominic Dunn wrote in Vanity Fair that Abramson was considered to be the most brilliant Los Angeles defense attorney for death row cases. In 1989, 1 year before Erik and Lyle Menendez shot their parents, Abramson successfully defended 17-year-old Arnel Salvatierra, who faced charges of first-degree homicide for the 1986 shootings of his father. With Abramson's support, the teen was instead convicted of voluntary manslaughter after allegations came to light and sentenced to probation, reported Dunn. The Menendez brothers hoped for the same outcome or similar outcome, and hopefully they still might get their charges reduced to voluntary manslaughter, um, or not necessarily voluntary, but to manslaughter. They might get them reduced because that was also asked for by George Gascon. So that's also a possibility. There's possibilities of resentencing, of just vacating their conviction altogether, getting a new trial. Like there's so many other possibilities now that they didn't have. They didn't have even one possibility before, and now they've got multiple. So at least, none of their possibilities or options of getting out have changed at this point, especially with the new DA coming in and getting that December 11th hearing pushed back to January 30th. It just means that the family and the brothers have to wait longer, unfortunately, to find out some answers. But hopefully, we get something sooner than January 30th. That would be ideal. So at this juncture, I will leave you guys. Next episode, because Thursday is in fact Thanksgiving, I'm going to put our second show this week on Friday at our normal time. I apologize. I'm late today. There was just, yeah, I needed a rest day yesterday, so sorry. But I'm late today, and Thursday show is going to be on Friday. I'm sorry. I apologize to